I want to welcome everybody here today. My name's Dale Worley. I'm not a professional speaker either. I didn't realize this was happening until several days ago. What I am is I'm a citizen that's concerned about losing my Second Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights. I came across something online that I wanted to share some of the information with you. Now, I know from talking to some people out here, walking over here and over at the gun show this morning, I know there's some people out here that are veterans, maybe of my vintage, some even older. How many of you out there are veterans? How many of you served? How many of you served back in the Cold War era? Okay. How many of you remember a publication called Pravda? Remember Pravda? Yeah. Yep. The publication, the Russian publication in the Cold War. Well, it's still there, but it's no longer operated by the communists. It's now a free paper. This was printed on the 28th of December of 2012. It's titled "Americans Never Give Up Your Guns." I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read some highlighted parts for you. It says, "This will probably come to a shock as most of my Western readers, but at one point, Russia was one of the most heavily armed societies on earth. This was, of course, when we were free under the Tsar. Weapons from swords and spears to pistols, rifles, and shotguns were everywhere. Common items. People carried them concealed. They carried them holsters. It was a part of their culture. Various armies, such as the Poles, Napoleon, the Germans, found that holding Russian lands was much harder than taking them, and taking them was no easy walk in the park, but it was a bloodbath all its own. In holding, one faced extremely well-armed and aggressive population hell-bent on exterminating or driving out the aggressor. This well-armed population was what allowed the various factions to rise up, no matter how disorganized politically. Militarily, they were in 1918 and waged a savage civil war against the Reds. It should be noted that many of these armies were armed peasants, villagers, farmers, merchants, protecting their own. Had it not been for the clandestine support of our government, then Washington and Wall Street, that had their own interest in mind, they would have won and the Reds would have lost at that point. The Moscow fell. Not from lack of weapons, but from the lying guile of the Reds. 10,000 Reds to Moscow opposed by a few hundred officers, cadets, and instructors. Even in battle spears was the lost side, but in the city alone at the time, you had over 30,000 officers that were armed, both active and retired, with their own weapons and ammunition, plus tens of thousands of citizens. The Soviets promised to leave them all alone if they did not intervene. They didn't, and for that, they were asked afterwards to come register themselves and their weapons, where they were promptly shot. Don't give up your weapons. Don't give up your rights. Don't allow one moment. Don't think for a moment that if you give up this right, that the next right won't be the freedom of speech. Do you hear what I'm saying? Yeah. If you give in on this, if we give in on this, the next thing that happens is going to be the freedom of speech. The federal government will be imposing their will on you, your family, your children, and they want the power. That's all they want. They want the power over you. Okay. The Reds learned from their Civil War experience. One of the first things they did was disarm the population. From that point, mass repression, mass arrests, mass deportations, mass starvation, mass murder were all safe game for the powers that were. They didn't have anything to fear anymore but a pitchfork. To this day, the Soviet Union, now gone 21 years, and a whole generation born and raised into adulthood without the Soviet Union, we are still denied our basic and traditional rights to self-defense. Why? We're told that everyone would just start shooting each other, and crime would be everywhere. But you know what? He says the criminals are still armed and still murdering all too often. especially in the far regions of the Soviet Union, where the local officials pay no heed to the actual rule of law. Putin pushes through reforms. The local authorities do not feel they need to act like they work for the people. They do as they please. A tyrannical class who knows they have absolutely nothing to fear from a relatively unarmed population. For those of us fighting for our traditional rights, this is coming from Russia, from Pravda. For those of us fighting for our traditional rights, the U.S. Second Amendment is a rare light in an ever-darkening room. Governments will use the excuse of trying to protect the people from the maniacs and crime, but in reality, it is the bureaucrats protecting their power and position. In all cases where guns are banned, crime continues and often increases. As for the maniacs, be it nuts with cars, swords in Japan, knives in China, homemade bombs everywhere, throwing acid in Pakistan, fire bombs in France, they attack. The maniacs attack. They'll always attack. What's worse, I'm going to read this. The best way to stop a maniac is not psychology or jail or talking to them. It is a bullet in the head. That's why they're a maniac, because they're incapable of living in reality or stopping themselves. No, it's not about power or total power over people. There is a lot to desire or to badmouth about the Tsar, particularly by the communists, who claim he was a tyrant, yet under the Tsar they were armed, and under the progressives they're disarmed. Do not be fooled by a belief that progressives, leftists, hate guns. No, they do not. What they hate is guns in the hands of those who are not marching in lockstep with their ideology. They hate guns in the hands of those who think for themselves and do not obey without question. They hate guns in whom they have slated for a barrel to the back of the ear. So, do not fall for the false promises and do not extinguish the light that is left to allow humanity a measure of self-respect. Defend your rights. Sign this petition. Write letters. Send emails. Stand up for your rights while you still have them. A bunch of us fought for them. We got in line, and we chose to march to protect these rights. By God, get out there and protect them for yourself now. Start right here. Thank you.
Thank you. Another thing that we all need to make sure that we're doing, and if you're here, you should be a registered voter, because without that vote, you have no say to Washington. You can't change their minds without your vote. They need your vote to stay in office.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Thorne. Most of you don't know me, but I'm a retired Arkansas State Trooper, and I've also been a victim of violence. I shotgunned in the line of duty, and it's left me with a permanent souvenir. Where we got to this point, I've thought about, have too many conclusions, but how in the world do we let these people take control of our government?
Yeah.
I look at Washington, and it just makes me sick. And I don't care what party, because I see the same thing on both sides.
Right, come on.
Our current president, and it didn't start with him. We can take this back to the mid-60s and maybe a little bit beyond that. Little by little by little, year by year by year, our money's being taken from us, our taken stuff that we do not want. I don't care to support the people in Palestinian Liberation Organization. I saw those people dance when the 9/11 was down at the towers fell. Why should we pay them to dance at our problems? I don't like that. I'm not going to pay it. I'm not a protester, but I'm tired of supporting everybody on this planet that hates our government. I'm sorry, hates our country. Our country and our government are not the same thing. If you look at Washington, we see that. Sometimes we can look here at Topeka and see that. It's wrong. going to have to take our country back, or we're going to end up all permanent residents of a gulag, or a concentration camp, or anything that government doesn't want us to be. They say get rid of guns. This will get rid of crime. Okay. I've been hearing that argument for years and years and numbers. And the first murder that I recall was Cain and Abel. I don't believe there was a firearm involved in that. And the Bible tells us that Samson slew the Philistines, or Philistines, for the jawbone of an ass. The jawbone of our ass is in Washington. I'm told by our current president, and he by no means has a monopoly on this, that I'm responsible for the shooting at Sandy Hook. I'm not responsible for that, and I refuse to be punished for it. Just to parrot what's been said over and over and over. They take the guns away from us, law-abiding citizens. Criminals don't care. I remember when Clinton was president with his billion-dollar white elephant boondoggle, the crime bill. We spent $100 million so kids could play basketball at night. I'm telling you, that didn't stop anything. I heard about, well, I lobbied Congressman Jeffries, and his office said, well, don't you think that police officers want to see people disarmed? I said, no. I said, you disarm the people, police officers next. They're just people. But they don't listen to us because they don't care. Well, we have to think about anything. They are the ruling class, self-anointed, and we are nothing but sheep to be led and fleeced. And like I said, I started out my first little job as a police officer in 1973, and I took my oath to protect the people and the country, nothing about the government. Like I said, the government's separate. And quite obviously, the government cares nothing about us. It's us who care about our country, us that's going to take care of it. They won't, because they don't care. You know, I hear, well, you know, we don't need guns around schools. We don't need armed guards. Well, when I went to school, we didn't. Times have changed. You know, the president needs to have his kids protected. What's wrong with ours? Are they any less? Yeah, exactly. It's a double standard. And as long as the government does not respect us as a people, they don't respect us as human beings. And little by little, over a period of years, because I used to be, if the government said it, it's got to be right. Why would they lie to us? That doesn't make any sense to me, and it still doesn't. I understand it now, but it still doesn't make any sense. So I've gone from believing everything the government everything the government says, to little, if anything, the government says. Government is a lot of bullying and threats. And if you will cower to that, that will make you afraid.
Going on.
They don't have the power. They don't have the wherewithal. They can't do it physically, so they've got to cause you to believe that they can. And this battle's over. Thanks for
What a beautiful day. This day is January. My name's Kevin Bailey, and I'm from Kansas City, Kansas. And boy, I did not expect to say anything, but boy, I'm proud to be here and represent this United States and this beautiful country. And just for a moment, I'm a little bit crazy, but I'm a balanced individual. I just want to, we got to shake some cobwebs off here. And when I drop this arm, I want to hear an outstanding, hey! You ready? You ready?
Okay.
Ready?
All right,
Here we go.
Jason's startup. Right? Is this going to be on my Facebook page?
And we're going to go,
Maybe it's Kansas City.
ready?
Out there, you'll be amazed at the shut up down there.
I've had that flag since back in 1982. Then I joined the Marine Corps, and I kept faithful the whole time. I honorably served 7 years under the Honorable Mr. Reagan. The best thing I ever did is, you ready? Remember this one? Hey! Ho! Hey! Ho!
Okay, good.
One thing I wanted to say real quick, and I'm going to be very short about it. You know, we're talking about the Second Amendment. But folks, it's a package deal. Yes, we're here about the Second Amendment. We're about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And I'm a born-again believer. I gave my heart to Jesus Christ back in 1983 when I joined the Marine Corps. And what I want to say to you, I'm not going to get preachy on you. We need to get back to basics. And we can have all the weapons, we can have all the bullets, but if we're not divinely blessed by God, it ain't going to stand. And so I would just tell you folks, personally, as you leave here, as you stand here, is do a heart check. What do I believe in? What do I stand for? And if you need to repent, as I believe our country needs to do, we need to do that. Because if we're blessed by God, nothing can stop us. And that's all I'm going to say. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. God bless America.
My name is Bob Few. In the late 60s, early 70s, I served 7 years in our Navy aboard submarines. Oh, yeah! Dive deeper, stay longer. Some of you probably remember Reagan's speech, "A time to choose." We're at a time to choose, just like we were then. We have two choices. We can surrender or we can fight. We recognize that if we surrender, nothing's going to happen to us except the loss of our freedom. We also recognize if we choose today to stand up for our Constitution, things bad can happen to us. Everybody who served in the military has taken that risk most every day. Well, it's time to remember your oath. Your oath is to defend the Constitution. Period. Thank you.
The only way that they can take away our guns is if we let them. We need to send Washington and Topeka a message that we're not going to let them. We're here, we're united, we're all brothers and sisters, and we will fight to keep our right to keep and bear arms. God bless everyone for showing up today. God bless the United States. Long live the Republic.
Something I want to address, and my wife reminded me that I did. Something else going on in Washington, D.C. is the bowing to the United Nations. I will not succumb to anything the United Nations says. They can stand me up against the wall and shoot me. That's right. That's fine. At least I'll die on my feet. It makes me so angry that our leaders, and I use that in quotes because I don't see any leadership out of Washington, and especially our current president said, well, we have a UN resolution. So what? I'm not going to stand by and let somebody in Indonesia, the Congo, the Soviet, or Russia, pardon me, old school, Venezuela, any of those people say, well, you've got to do this and you've got to do that.
That's right, we're free!
That's right. This is the United States of America.
Yeah!
We are U.S. citizens. We are not global citizens. I don't want to teach the world to sing anything. I take this very seriously. My family, parts of my family, on this continent since the 1600s, fought in all of our wars. Sometimes on both sides, you know what I mean? Troubles back in the 1800s. But they all fought for freedom. I'm not going to dishonor them, their memory, or the sacrifice that they made by saying, well, just surrender, it won't hurt. Yeah, it will.
Yeah, it will.
For a while, until you can't feel anything anymore. My belief, and yes, I would like you to agree with me, but if you don't, that's fine. This is the United States. You can do that. I think we ought to kick the UN out of our country. If they don't want to go on their own peacefully, then they can go at bayonet point. I don't care. They just need to get out. I don't bow to them. I don't recognize them. They don't rule anybody here.
History repeats itself.
Right. And if they, you know, the rest of the world wants to say, oh yeah, well, we love the UN, like the European Union, for example. Now, there's a conglomerate for you of old enemies becoming fast friends. I don't think so. It won't last. Like the Euro is going to. Why? Because those people hate each other. They have for years and years. People don't get over that. But if they want to function under that system of government, more power to them. I refuse. Thank you.
Again, we have two sheets to sign up so we can petition our U.S. senators. For those of you who haven't signed up, please make your way up here and sign those before you leave today. And then we have one more speaker here.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Gillespie. I'm currently serving in the United States military, and that's about all I can tell you due to DoD regulations. I see a lot of signs around here that have a lot of quotes from some of our founding fathers and from numerous important people. I put down a few words because I had too many just to put on a sign. So if I could have everyone's indulgence to let me read what I put down on paper. Thank you. Thomas Jefferson said, in matters of style, swim with the current. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. That is why we're gathered here today, to stand together with one voice in support of our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. Thomas Jefferson is one of our founding fathers and the main author of the Declaration of Independence. He was also the third president of our United States. Thomas Jefferson was a man of great vision, and many of his notable quotes from over 200 years ago are still very relevant today. He also said, educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. That is also why we're here today, to educate and inform the people, and more importantly, our elected officials, that we, as American citizens, will not tolerate the erosion of our Second Amendment rights. My final quote from our third president is this: all tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. We are here today to be heard, and we will not remain silent. There are many people who will scoff and say, there is no tyranny here, and I will have to agree with them. We're not living under the boot heel of a tyrant. We live in the United States of America, without question, the greatest country in the world.
You got that!
But I dare say that we exist without tyranny solely because of our rights as guaranteed by the Second Amendment. There are those who say the Second Amendment is archaic and is no longer necessary, for we have a standing army to protect us. Well, I'm here personally to tell you that I'm well aware of the military might of this country. Let's talk to residents of New Orleans who were victims of Katrina when law enforcement officers and military soldiers, under the guise of offering assistance, went door to door confiscating weapons. Where was the outrage then? Where was our voice? It was not heard, for people of good conscience remained silent. As a lumberjack stands before a mighty oak with his axe in hand, he knows well that he will not be able to complete his task with one mighty swing. He must swing and chop, removing tiny bits of that tree until enough wood has been cut away that it no longer has the strength to stand and it comes crashing to the forest floor. Well, that is what's happening in Washington today. Those who seek to strip us of our rights know that they cannot simply take it away in one fell swoop. They must whittle away bit by bit, weakening it. They claim it's for the greater good and for the safety of our children. Well, it has long been said that if they outlaw guns, only the outlaws will have guns. Well, how will we, as a free people, be able to defend ourselves from those who choose to be lawless, and if we ourselves, who are law-abiding citizens, are deprived of the ability to defend? In today's world of social media, quips and quotes and cartoons of virtually every viewpoint abound. Please like if you agree. Seriously, news media, particularly mainstream media, seem to feel that if they clarify, a new poll suggests that they can say just about anything. One study suggests that the majority of Americans want to abolish guns. I can honestly say that I doubt that that poll contacted anybody from this group. Am I correct? Our elected officials need to hear our voice. They need to know that we do not support further restrictions on our rights. People who wish to abolish firearms tell us, well, we're not taking away your rights. They just want to make it harder for bad guys to get them. So they institute background checks. Well, that's not unreasonable. Well, we just want to restrict magazine capacity or the so-called assault weapons. Well, every concession that we give as a free people is one step closer to the complete erosion of our ability to defend ourselves, both as individuals and as a country. So I ask you today, please contact your local representative. Let them know that we do not support further restrictions on any of our Second Amendment rights. Let them know, sign these petitions, write letters, make phone calls, and let them know that we shall not be infringed.
Kind of short. Thank you. My name is Deborah Simon. I just thought I'd want to come up and make a statement. I didn't plan on it at all. This is my first demonstration too.
All right!
I wanted you to know that I'm 100% Native American. I am Second Fox and I am Kickapoo. And I'm very proud of my race. 400 years ago, this land was inhabited by noble and proud people. Now, this is not a story about what happened to Native Americans, because we know what happened to Native Americans. But I wanted to remind you how that this country was overtaken. It was by taking away the weapons. They took away the bows, the arrows, and then the spears, and then they took away the rifles. And then they rounded up everyone and put them on reservations. And some of those reservations are still operating, still with the people in those areas. And they don't have a good life. I've had a good life in the United States because my parents brought me out of there and embraced me in Topeka. I served 20 years in the Army National Guard and Reserve. And I am proud of my country. But I will not let anyone take away my weapons again. Thank you.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Kevin Frederick. This is my first demonstration. I had not expected to speak today, but I thought I'd be out here to support the Second Amendment. I'm a combat veteran. I've been in Iraq, Afghanistan. I've endured 4 months of mortars and rockets raining down on me and people shooting at me in Baghdad. I fought for your Second Amendment rights and all rights. I fought for you. And it concerns me that gun grabbers in Washington, the Brady Bunch, Mayor Bloomberg, are doing what they're doing to water down our rights. In 1994, Senator Feinstein introduced and passed by 4 votes the assault weapons ban by 4 votes. Let's make sure in 2013 that when she reintroduces that assault weapons ban on the 22nd, that it doesn't pass by 4 votes, but it's defeated by hundreds of votes. Thank you.
I know you said you were going to wrap this up, so generally you sing the national anthem before you get started, but I'm going to do this afterwards. And I think everyone, if you can find this on the internet, you need to find it and read it to your kids, because I'm telling you, I'm going to start crying already. I found this on the internet, and it was an oration given by a man in a church. And I'm telling you, if you don't cry for what people did for you, why we were here, how we got here, then there's something wrong with you. This is the reason why we do what we do. This is why everyone here, if you have the ability, if you have the capability, run for an office, do something. You've got to make a change, and you've got to write to your senators. You have to do something. You can't stand back and not do it. You can't expect everyone else to say, he's going to do it for me, because they don't. Everyone thinks everyone's going to do everything for them, and it doesn't happen. So if I can wipe my tears and get this going. This is on my Facebook, by the way, if anybody wants to print it. There was a lawyer once. His name was Francis Scott Key. He penned a song that I'm sure that you're all aware of. You've seen it. It's in most hymnals throughout the churches and in our school books. It's called the National Anthem. It is our song as an American. We go, however, to a ball game and we stand in our church services and we sing the words of that song. And they float over our minds and our lips, and we don't even realize what we're singing. Most of us don't even realize what we're singing. Most of us have memorized it as a child, but we've never really thought about what it means. Let me tell you a story. Francis Scott Key was a lawyer in Baltimore. The colonies were engaged in vicious conflict with the mother country, Britain. Because this conflict and the protractedness of it, they had accumulated prisoners on both sides. The American colonies had prisoners and the British had prisoners. And the American government initiated a move. They went to the British and they said, let us negotiate for the release of these prisoners. And they said, we want to send a man out to discuss this with you. They were holding the American prisoners in boats about 1,000 yards offshore, and they said, we want to send a man by the name of Francis Scott Key. He will come out and negotiate to see if we can make a mutual exchange. On the appointed day in a rowboat, he went out on this boat and he negotiated with the British officials, and they reached a conclusion that men could be exchanged one for another on a one-to-one basis. Francis Scott Key, jubilant at the fact that he'd been successful, went down below in the boats, and what he found was a cargo hold full of men, humanity. Men, he said, men, I've got news for you tonight. You're free. Tonight I have negotiated successfully your return to the colonies, he said, but you'll be taken out of this boat, out of this filth, out of your chains. And he went back up on board to arrange for their passage to the shore. The admiral came and he said, we have a slight problem, he said. We will still honor our commitment to release these men, but it will be merely academic after tonight. It won't matter. And Francis Scott Key said, what do you mean? He said, well, Mr. Key, he said, tonight we have laid an ultimatum upon the colonies. Your people will either capitulate and lay down the colors of that flag that you think so much of, or you see that fort right over there, Fort Henry, he said, we're going to remove it from the face of the earth, he said. How are you going to do that, he said? If you will scan the horizon of the sea. And as he looked, he could see hundreds of little dots. And he said, that's the entire British war fleet. He said, all of the gunpowder, all of the armament is being called upon to demolish that fort. It will be here within striking distance in a matter of about 2.5 hours. He said, that war over there, these men would be free anyway. He said, you can't shell that fort. He said, that's a large fort. It's full of women and children. He says it's predominantly not a military fort. He said, don't worry about it. He said, what's that? He said, we have told them that if they lower the flag, the shelling will stop immediately. And we'll know that they've surrendered, and you'll now all be under British rule. Francis Scott Key went down below and told the men what was about to happen. And they said, how many ships? He said, hundreds. The ships got closer, and Francis Scott Key went up on top, and he said, men, I'll shout down to you what's going on as we watch. As twilight began to fall, and as the haze hung over the ocean, as it does at sunset, suddenly the British war fleet unleashed. He says the sound was deafening. There were so many guns that there were no reliefs. He said it was absolutely impossible to talk or hear. He said suddenly the sky, although dark, was suddenly lit, and he says from down below, all he could hear, the men, the prisoners, saying was, tell us where the flag is. What have they done with the flag? Is the flag still flying over the rampart? Tell us. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours into the shelling, every time the bomb would explode and it would be close to the flag, they would see the flag in the illuminated red glare of that bomb. And Francis Scott Key would report down to the men down below, it's still up, it's not down. The Admiral came and he said, your people are insane, he said. What's the matter with them? He said, don't they understand this is an impossible situation? Francis Scott Key said he remembered that George Washington had said, he said, that the thing that sets the American Christian apart from all other people in the world is that he will die on his feet before he'll live on his knees.
Oh, yeah!
The Admiral said, we have now instructed all of the guns to focus on the rampart to take that flag down. He said, we don't understand something. Our reconnaissance tells us that that flag has been hit directly again and again and again, and yet it's still flying. We don't understand that. But he said, now we're about to bring every gun for the next 3 hours to bear on that point. Francis Scott Key said, the barrage was unmerciful. All that he could hear was the men down praying below the prayer, God, keep that flag flying where we last saw it. Sunrise came. He said there was heavy mist hanging over the land, but the rampart was tall enough. There stood the flag completely nondescript in shreds. The flagpole itself was at a crazy angle, but the flag was still at the top. Francis Scott Key went aboard and immediately went into Fort Henry to see what had happened. And what he'd found had happened was that that flag had suffered repetitive, direct hits. And it had fallen. That men and fathers who knew what it meant for that flag to be on the ground, although knowing that all the British guns were trained on it, walked over and held it up humanly until they died. Their bodies were removed, and others took their place. Francis Scott Key said that what held that flagpole in place at that unusual angle were patriots' bodies. He penned the song, oh, say, can you see, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? For the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that the flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet fly and wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave? The death was demanded, the price it was paid. And it was paid for all of us, and we have to keep this alive.
That's right.
One more time.
Again, if you haven't done so, we've got petitions up here for both senators. Please come up and sign those. And our work today is not finished here. When we leave here, we need to go home, write our congressmen, write our state senators, both our state and federal representatives.
Yeah.
We need to make them aware, because what they're hearing in Washington is we're ready to give up our rights. And I don't think that's the case.
We're not going to lay down.
So we need to write our senators, write our representatives, call them. Everybody's got cell phones nowadays. It's free long distance. Call them in Washington and let them know what you want. let them know that the Second Amendment is not up for debate.
That's right. Thank you.
Sandy Hook, I've done a lot of thinking, and I've heard a lot of things. I can't imagine. It's not I can't imagine. I would not feel one bit safer if they took away my 30-round magazines. I would not feel one bit safer for my son if they banned firearms altogether. The same stuff is still going to continue. The NRA stood up and came up with an idea that would make my son safe. And what did the other side do? What did they do? They booed. So what's their real intention? It doesn't seem like it's public safety. It seems like they've got something else in mind. And so I want to ask a question. Whose country is this? Who made this country? Were they weak and unarmed people that made this country? No. Did they behave anything like Obama and his clan? No. Whose country is this? It's our country! Thank you.
Also, there's another group, I don't remember their name, but they're going to have another pro-Second Amendment rally on the 8th at all the capitals. Right now, I've heard that they're having problems getting the permits because of a lack of sponsorship by their legislators. So if you could reach out to your legislators on that and let them know that you'd like their sponsorship and that you're voters. Thank you.
I hadn't planned on speaking anything today, but I do have the phone number for Senator Jerry Moran and Pat Roberts, and I'm from the 3rd District, so I have Kevin Yoder's phone number. You'd have to find your own representative, but Senator Jerry Moran in Washington's phone number is 202-224-6521. I have called them, and they are normally very respectful and easy to get along with. I called this current week after I found out about this rally and heard the President's remarks, and I let them know that I thought that the Vice President's favorite phrase, malarkey, was very appropriate for most of what Obama said. But again, Jerry Moran's phone number is 202-224-6521.
We'll dial him up now. Let's see what he's got to say.
Well, you're probably going to get a recording on the weekend. After all, they are government employees. So. Now, for Pat Roberts, again, this is their Washington office. You can find their local offices all over the state, but 202-224-4774. That's Senator Pat Roberts.